Buongiorno a tutti, sono Laura Ragazzola, architetto, giornalista e vi do il benvenuto a SID Oslo. Come potete notare ci troviamo in un luogo davvero speciale, siamo infatti sulla piazza dell'Opera House, questo straordinario edificio realizzato nel 2008 e che anno dopo anno è diventato un po' il simbolo della capitale norvegese. È stato progettato dallo studio Snoetta, una delle firme più importanti e aggiungerei visionarie nel panorama del progetto internazionale, una realtà davvero globale con quasi i suoi 300 fra architetti, paesaggisti, ingegneri, designer, grafici, con sedi in tutto il mondo, ma che ha proprio qui ad Oslo e non lontano da dove vi sto parlando il suo cuore, perché qui è nato nel 1989. Seguo questo studio da moltissimi anni e quindi sono davvero molto contenta di presentarvi l'architetto Kjetil Thorsen, co-founder insieme a Greg Dickers dello studio Snoetta, e il giovane e brillante architetto italiano Tommaso Maserati. L'Opera House non è soltanto un teatro, innanzitutto è una piazza aperta tutte le ore del giorno, della notte, dove le persone possono appunto venire ed incontrarsi. Non è soltanto un luogo dove si recita o si danza, insomma, per farla breve, è un luogo di incontri, un luogo di relazioni, un luogo di condivisione e diciamo anche che l'idea di uno spazio dove la gente ha voglia di andare perché comunque si trova bene porta inevitabilmente quel concetto di sostenibilità sociale. Mr. Thorsen, how important is it for architecture to involve people both emotionally and intellectually? And which tools can the architect use to understand their needs and their desires?
It's a wonderful question, and you know it's a wonderful question. But let me put it this way, at the very, very beginning of any debates, any discussions on architecture, let me be very clear. There is no architecture without people. There might be art without people. There might be monuments without people. But architecture is per se for the further, let's say, expansion of social life, of public life, of private life. It's all about us. The buildings, our surroundings, physical surroundings, are the tools. That's what we use in order for us to promote sensitivity in the public, to discover things in yourself that you probably didn't understand that you had before the day you discovered them. So the social life that we're looking for is a singular social life, but it's also a plural social life. It's groups and communities together, but also individuals. So what we're trying to do is not to sort of establish a certain standard for how this should happen, but every time you do a project, you should be generous enough with that project for the people to take ownership in this project. So public ownership is at the hub of what we're doing. This chair, when I'm sitting on this chair right now, it's my chair. When I leave this chair, it belongs to someone else who actually owns the chair. The same with the Opera House. If you can sit on the roof, you can touch it, you can lay down on it, you can have your lunch on it. In that moment, when you're sitting on something and you're touching it, it's yours. And this feeling of ownership, public ownership, is at the peak of what architecture can do when it involves the public, in a way that they learn to know themselves better than they did before.
Tommaso, Mr. Thorsen spoke about the idea of shared architecture. I like to know if and this idea can be applied to all the scales. And would you like to give us some concrete examples?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Laura. This is just a fantastic experience. And yeah, I think, as you said, I totally agree. What you said, I think it can be definitely applied to different scales of the project, scales that as Snoetta we do multidisciplinarily. We move from master plan to building to product to even the immaterial graphic design research. And I think it's important to understand that for us, of course, there is this really strong morphological push at the beginning, but what I think is really essential of our project and really unique is that in every situation we try to challenge the brief and challenge the condition we're presented to try to define a new use, a new function of the building, so a real programmatical new definition for the building itself. I believe this doesn't only apply to kind of like the scale, following your question, of the wonder, the scale of the iconic. It can also go down to the scale of the domestic.
Yes.
We just finished a master plan outside of Gothenburg, where a really innovative master plan, massive use of wood, but the really good thing behind the architecture, behind the sustainability, behind the use of material is the sense of social integration. So it's a project that puts together senior housing, student housing, everything around this big new space that is called the lake house. So all these different functions, therefore, are able to kind of like gather in the central piece.
Mr. Thorsen, is it estimated that the construction sector alone is responsible for 30% of carbon dioxide emissions? What can you reduce this impact? What are you doing in this studio?
It's a huge issue. We know that we really don't have much time. We have to react now. So we've been trying to work through the powerhouses, first of all, to look at what would happen if we look at the global CO2 of a building. Many buildings today have a CO2 comparison to their actual operations, meaning they look at how much energy they consume during operations, during maintenance over a lifetime. So you have to research the EPD, the environmental product declarations of each element that you're using in a building, and you have to find the CO2 equivalents. So we're looking at all the materials, we're looking at all the transport, then we're looking at all the consumption of energy that you have over the lifespan of the building. Then we look at all the maintenance that you have. And then at the end, we look at the recycling and the CO2 effect of the recycling, reuse of the project. And this powerhouse concept gives us, when we calculate all these CO2s, an understanding of how much clean energy does the building have to produce, how little energy does it have to consume in order for it to become, one, energy positive, and after a certain period of time, CO2 neutral, at least.
I think, Tommaso, and another important step is to start building with green and ecological materials. What do you do about this specific area in studio of Snohetta?
Well, in the past 5 years, we've been doing an extensive research on a wide array of material, went from plastic to clay to concrete to mycelium, the vegetative part of fungi, to recycled glass from electronic waste. For us, the important, the two key elements while doing research are, one, trying to switch the perception from waste to valuable resource.
Yeah.
That's the key element. The second one, as important, is creating more awareness. And in the sense, apart from the notion of the material and the benefit that we can all assume, we try to document the process with photos and videos. And this again is what we call kind of like, a passive trigger for the others, in the sense that by creating a medium that is easily understandable and gets a more kind of like overall amount of information, persons can relate better with the material that lives in a totally kind of like abstract imagination. Then in some instances that I can speak maybe a little more in detail, we were able to kind of switch back from this passive triggering, this passive kind of like engagement of people into an active one. A good example is the S1500 chair that we did in collaboration with NCP. And this chair is a chair that was made with recycled nets from fishing industry. And by activating a series of functions or a series of businesses that were going obsolete in north of Norway, and by sort of kind of like refueling in this new idea, this new kind of like use of material, we were able to amend back the social fabric. So the industry that before was kind of like grinding metal, totally kind of like getting obsolete by the what we know, the speed and the pace of globalization, all of a sudden had kind of like raw material that can process, and in the same position they can inject and mold a new chair. That's a really good example. Even in the Italian scale, we've been collaborating for this project of 4i tiles, really small tiles that is made of recycled glass from electronic waste. A project we've been doing in Studio Plastique, Belgium office, and Pannacci Brioni, we all know, like a really big manufacturer of terracotta. But by doing this process, we were able to collect the glass from Italy, activating and taking a little portion of the furnace they use for burning terracotta and making it become a place where they burn glass.
Last question is about the future. And Mr. Thorsen, we always ask to our guests which seed would you like to live on a green table? A table where we cultivate a green, a responsible future. What is your seed, Mr. Thorsen?
Well, as you, maybe you know, maybe you don't know, but I was teaching for quite some time in Innsbruck in Austria. And what I've seen from young students is that they might have a hard time leaving their habits, say. So I've always advised my students, if you like football games only, go to an opera to see why you like the football game. If you get up early in the morning, try to sleep long to see why you like getting up early. So breaking habits to create comparisons between how your life as an architect might be, you have to get to know your own body. Because architecture is not created in the head or in the stomach only, but it's created with the whole body, the gravity, everything that we're dealing with. So my seed, the foremost seed, is sensitize yourself. Again, create the experiences where you believe that you can contribute to others, share with others the sensitization you've been through with the mind, with the body, and then bring that forward in your work. Make sure that you never ever sell yourself in a false way. Make sure you know yourself as a person and then contribute to the community by being who you are, but sensitized to you.
Yeah. And you, Tommaso, what about your seed?
Well, what I would like to leave as a personal kind of comment, we've been talking about upcycle and recyclable material, is the idea that we should all consume less to an extent. This is not enough to an extent, because I think what is in the project, especially what is key, is the use of landscape as a proper technological machine. A machine that not only does phytoremediation on the soil, not only captures CO2 into the soil itself, but the use of landscape as this element that ties the new building with the kind of like with existing volumes. And I think it's something that, again, it's really, again, emblematic, because at Snoetta, every architectural project also starts as a landscape project. So maybe my seed, maybe my hope for the future is that we try to kind of blur a little bit more this distinction between architecture and landscape, with the wish that designing cities and designing environments in the end is going to become the same things.
Ok, thank you so much, grazie ai nostri ospiti. Anch'io ho dei semi da lasciare su questo tavolo, i miei però sono dei semi veri, da cui nasceranno dei fiori, di cui le api sono ghiottissime. Avete capito proprio bene, sto parlando appunto delle api, che sono così importanti per il nostro equilibrio biologico, e la scelta non è a caso, perché Snoetta, sensibile al futuro delle api, che come sappiamo tutti è molto a rischio, nel 2014 ha realizzato delle bellissime casine solo proprio per le api, così belle che se fossi una pina mi verrebbe voglia di andare dentro, di abitarci anch'io lì, perché si tratta di arnie in legno super design che sono state, diciamo, montate proprio non lontano da qui, nell'eco quartiere di Oslo, che si chiama Vulcan, sopra il tetto di una casa. Thank you so much for that too. Grazie, grazie
Thank
mille.
you. Thank you very much.